Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, the channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and these are my thoughts on Horrified, World of Monsters. Okay, so this is Horrified World of Monsters. This is a cooperative game. It's the fourth in a series of games. This review is kind of going to be about this particular game a little bit, but mostly, I think a lot of people that watch the channel, probably more avid gamers and stuff, you're probably familiar with this system. So most of the time I'm going to talk about, take most of the time to talk about what is different or better or worse about this particular version. So first, just speaking generally, this is a cooperative game, which is basically pick up and deliver. You're picking up different items and delivering them to do specific effects. You're also doing this with citizens that all appear on the board, and you're depositing them so that you can get special cards that will give you one-time abilities, events type of thing. This game is mainly sort of well, it's exclusive to Target, or it is for a while. So I think mainly this game is sort of geared towards just a general gaming audience. And because of that, they tend to be less difficult. I don't believe I've ever lost a game of Horrified. I played quite a lot of it. Maybe I lost a game in there at some point, but I'm pretty sure I've not lost a game. I've gone a lot to the end turns. And this game feels along the lines of that difficulty. It does give you an additional way to add in an additional monster. Normally 3 is what you'd play with, but I always kind of feel like 4 monsters on the board at the same time kind of makes it impossible to get away from them. And I'm not quite as big a fan of that balance, but I do like the fact that they did include that, in the rules as well. This game is, very inexpensive. The quality that you get in the components is very good, especially for that money. The miniatures are decent. I mean, they're not phenomenal, but they are pretty good. The Yeti looks great. I like the hopping vampire and the Sphinx. It looks a little bit weird, but overall, I think that they're pretty good, especially, as I said, for the price point. Then you get like a bag that has this thing like Horrified on it, and just stuff like this on the board where like this is this gorgeous piece of art, looks great when you open the box, and it has no real gameplay. You don't even see that really at all. So yeah, in general, very good production of the game and stuff. I do think one weird thing, this is just like a nitpick, these monster mats that they have in the game, they're very large. They're much larger than the other version of the game, I believe, the other versions. And that might seem like kind of silly for me to point out, but it takes up a lot more space now, and I kind of like the compactness, especially since you're usually playing with at least 3 different monsters. So, it does take up a lot more space. So that's kind of a little bit of a nitpick. So this is supposed to be more for like non-gamers and stuff. I do think that I played this with some non-gamers, and I said, how do you like it? And they said, well, it was fun, but I don't think I'd play it again without like someone like you to kind of keep the game going, because I think the complexity is just a little bit higher than people that are not gamers would like. But I think that's generally kind of where it fits in. Now it is a very modular game. As I said, you can play 3 or 4 monsters, and you can mix and match which monsters you want to play with. There are in this version only 4 monsters, whereas in the other games there were usually 5, I believe, or maybe more. And so there's a little less of that variety here. But it does have the ability to combine with the Greek monster set, and we're going to go into more in detail in that in a moment. First, let's kind of go through the monsters, because that's really the big thing that changes the game up. They're very good. They're enjoyable. They're very much just like others in the series. You've got the hopping vampire, which Zhongxi, which is kind of cool because you don't see him in a lot of games, hopping vampires. The Ghost Stories is the only thing I can think of that they have that. I really love the hopping vampire movies, and it's kind of underused in gaming. If you could think of another hopping vampire in a game, I would love to hear about it. But he's cool. He's a little more complex. You have to one thing in here, you have to find a layer. So that's one of the differences between this one. And instead of just automatically going to a location, you have to kind of turn over these locations and find the layers. So the layers will only affect the Yeti and Zhongxi. So you have to kind of find those 2 out of 4, and you have to spend actions to do that. But you'll build this kind of coin sword, and it has like this polyominoes or whatever. You have to kind of like fit the pieces in to make a sword. It's just a kind of a cool little mini game, which most of these are. So I like him. I think he's kind of fun, is interesting, and you have to really think about which items you're dropping off and getting rid of, because you don't have all the options in the world, so you have to like be able to pick and choose. So it's kind of neat. The Yeti I really like. He really reminds me of the Bigfoot, because they're like both kind of Sasquatch creatures, But I like the Yeti because, he's like Bigfoot in the fact that, like, he's not a bad guy. He just wants his kids. So you have to kind of round up his kids and bring them. But you can't guide, you can only guide one person at a time. And so, like, it kind of makes it harder for you to guide the civilians where they may get killed more easily. You have to bring them back to his lair, so you have to kind of find his lair first. And there's some other cards that interact interestingly with the lairs, and there's some neat tricks that can happen there. But overall, he's very simple. Like, he's a very much more straightforward kind of a monster, which I think is fine. I think you need to have some of those. Not every single monster can be super complicated. So I think he's a cool little monster. He's interesting. And then the Sphinx, I think thematically is really awesome. You have to put these things in this grid, and it has to, like, it's a grid of 6, 3, and 3, 2 lines of 3, and all the numbers have to add up vertically as well as horizontally. So they have these numbers on the side, and that's kind of a cool thing. I like that they have that because you have to think about it, and it really kind of feels like you're solving the Sphinx's riddle thematically. I think it's cool, and you have to go right to him, whereas most of the monsters and things, you'll do a bunch of things and then you'll take the main fight to the monster when you're ready, but you have to sit on his square and kind of keep activating all of these things, so you have to be there with him. So he's a little more dangerous, and I like that difference there. And then you have Cthulhu. Now let's talk about the Cthulhu real fast. I love Lovecraft. I love his, his whole pantheon of creatures and monsters and things. Cthulhu's a little played out for me. He's fine, but I think, there's so many different monsters in Lovecraft's world. I would have liked to see something different. There's a ton of Cthulhu games already, so seeing him here isn't super exciting to me. I like the addition of the other monsters a little bit better, but, I'm fine with it. It's okay. His monster, though, is very interesting. He's maybe the more complicated. There was one of the monsters, the Jersey Devil, I think, in the American Monsters was pretty complicated, but I think Cthulhu might be the most complicated. You have to get him to the void, this middle space in the board. You have to go to the middle space in the board, the void, and kind of, just do normal things where you move these runic things around, and you want to match these symbols. And at that point, he will leave the board. Now, what's cool about it is that you haven't beaten him yet. Now you have to go to the corpse city of Raylia to do this final battle with him. But what the most fascinating part of this is strategy-wise, is that you can decide to, hey, we're going to put him away into this world so he doesn't move around anymore, so he's not really fighting you. And so if you do that, then you can kind of like focus fire and go after the other monsters for a while, and then come in here and do your final battle in this city, which is a neat thing. Now, in the city, you're kind of like, you can block out these certain symbols to keep him from activating. That's part of the combinability thing I'll go back into in a minute. And it's much the same kind of mini game, but when you're in that world with him, it's much easier for him to attack you. Other monsters can come in. It's got its own board and stuff. So it's kind of neat. It feels a bit like Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, or Arkham Horror, where you have that final fight with the monsters or whatever. So I like that. I am going to note, however, so they have these, it's divided into steps. So steps 1 and 2 to how to beat him are on his first card. When he leaves the board, you'll bring out the second one and have steps 3 and 4. Steps 3 and 4, I think, are atrociously written. They use some of the same terminology to define different actions. To me, I feel like it is very confusing, and especially for the wheelhouse of the people that this game is supposed to be pitched for. I think they're going to have a harder time with it as well, or maybe just play it incorrectly. Both of the 3 and 4 steps, I think you could interpret in different ways, and both of them are unclear, and then when combined together, make it an even murkier soup. Really, I find it to be really poorly written, and I'm really bummed about it, because I played it as best I could, but it really seemed very, very unclear, and it's strange because this whole series is often very streamlined, very clear, very friendly, and with this iconography and everything. And I really, that's really the first time I feel like I've had any kind of an issue with the rules. And there was one rule in the Bigfoot where there was some kind of way you could double interpret it. But other than that, I feel like everything else in the game has been very straightforward. So that's my one big sticking point. But it is a very fun little battle. It's much more epic. You feel much more epic than the other ones. You go into this other board and stuff. And so he's a little more complicated, but also a little more rewarding, I think. So now let's talk about the combinability. This game, a lot of people have been hoping for combinability. When the American Monsters came out, you couldn't combine it with the original game, and people were kind of bummed about that. This one has a whole system to do it, and basically it has these symbols on each of the monsters has 5 symbols, and when you look at the bottom of the card that activates monsters, you'll see like a sword symbol, and you'll look and you'll see which monsters have sword symbols, and those monsters will activate. So it only can combine with the Greek monsters box set at this point. But I mean, I'm fairly sure that this is going to be the way going forward. This has been the last 2 games have used this system. These 2 combinable systems, and I think going forward, that's what they're going to do because people wanted that. But I think for me personally, this is a huge miss, and I wish they had not done that. I wish they had stuck with the other one. And I'll explain why. Because 3 big reasons. Number 1, the theme. Okay, each of the first 2 boxes were just dripping with theme. I loved it. I love when you drew a card, from the monster deck. It was like Dracula turns into a bat. He goes over here. He reappears, and you're like, oh, that's really cool because it's really thematic. And this feels like Dracula. Not only the monster mat feels like Dracula, but throughout the entire game that you're playing, Dracula is doing like Dracula things. And it's the same with the other monsters, same with the American monsters, and all that kind of stuff, like the cryptozoological monsters and things. And I really like that. I really like that it feels much more thematic. This game, because the decks are going to have to be approached for many different monsters, you're not getting any much of a theme like that. Well, it's like, it's just a more generic theme. So, it'll have to say something like the monster goes crazy or whatever, right? And it's like, this kind of monster attacks or whatever. But it doesn't, like, when I'm fighting the Sphinx, that's all. Just on his mat, that's how you feel the theme. The theme is now completely, divorced from the deck because it just has to be completely generic. So I think that's a huge miss for the theme. It's not as contained. It's much more diluted, is probably the best way to say it. I remember and I was going to bring up Arkham Horror again, but I remember with all those expansions that would come out for that game, it got very diluted. So if you're fighting a specific monster, like, you wouldn't feel that impact as much. And when the Elgitor came out, and I know that's bloated as well now, but they were like, hey, this is going to be a much more thematic game because you're gonna have certain things that have to happen, and each monster you're gonna feel that more through the game. And I think that that's a big miss here because you're no longer going to get that, and I really don't like that. Now, the second big thing that I don't like about it is I don't like the busy work of it. I really dislike that. One of the reasons that I go to this game is for its simplicity. I like a nice medium weight game that I can play and kind of veg out to. And it's pretty easy to play, and the turns move along pretty well. Now, instead of looking at the bottom of a card and saying, okay, cool, Creature of the Black Lagoon, Dracula, and Frankenstein act. Okay, well, I don't have Frankenstein in the game, and I killed the creature, so I just activate Dracula. Or you're like, okay, well, this has got Invisible Man and, Frankenstein. Okay, cool. Well, I'll activate both of them. Now it's like, hey, this is a sword symbol. And you can look through all 5 symbols on all 3 monsters. Is there a sword? This guy's got a sword. Is there a sword? Okay. And that might not seem like a huge deal, but you're playing like 30 rounds of this game. And so 30 times you have to go through 5 symbols on each monster. And I think that's crazy. I don't like it at all. It's way more busy work, and I want to pay more attention to playing the game. And so the theme, you lost some of the theme. You've added some busy work that's not really enjoyable. And lastly, like, when I want to play these kind of games, I want to open it up and I want to play it. I played both of the other versions quite a bit. And when I go to them, I can interact, swap the monsters around and play a different mix, play different characters, and I get a pretty good variety there. And then, this isn't a game that I'm going to play constantly. I mean, I play a good amount of it, but, it's not like I'm like, this is my game that I'm resting my gaming life on, right? Like, so I don't need to like pull out a game and say, okay, cool, I'm going to go get 2 different versions of Horrified, open them up, pull out monsters from both, set them up, make the setup more lengthy and involved and intricate, which doesn't need to be, and then play the game. And then when I'm done, now I got to divide everything up and figure out which goes in which box and put everything back in the right box again. That's a lot of extra work I don't really see much benefit in, honestly. Like, people, I mean, I don't need a million different permutations. I'm enjoying the game just fine. I enjoyed the first 2 versions quite a bit. I liked the variety of monsters in there, and I could play them in different orders or whatever, and then the characters. So I think that's kind of missing out here. And then that's the other thing, the characters in this version are a lot less compelling than the other ones. I don't feel like, oh, that's such a neat power, I want to try that. I didn't feel like the different characters were as impactful as other versions of the game were. So that's another thing there. And so, well, overall, let me talk about my overall thoughts. It's like Indigo into it. It's too much. I must sum up. So I'm just going to sum up. Overall, sure, you're getting the same great game of Horrified that you've got all along. It's simple, it's enjoyable, it's very approachable, inexpensive, and has some good variety there for a medium weight cooperative game, which I love. I enjoy the new monsters. I like what they bring to the table. I like the differences and the new kind of scenarios to play and enjoy. I do not like the busybodiness, the loss of theme that comes from the combinability. I don't like, that aspect to it. So I feel like if I'm going to go for one of these games and I don't own one, this would not be the first one I would go to. I'd probably go to one of either the American Monsters or the original My Favorite when it was the Universal Monsters. So overall, great game. Not my favorite in the series, but still very enjoyable to play. Hopefully that helped you out to whether you're deciding to buy this game or not. But for now, I gotta roll.